Good day and welcome to today's Conversation podcast. Today, I am very privileged to host an academic, a diplomat, and an accomplished professional. He was among the first students when the University of Zambia opened. He holds 4 university degrees from the American universities. Usually he writes on political science with specialization in international relations. He also served as Director General of the Eastern and Southern Africa Management Institute, ESAMI, and also served as Secretary General of the SADC Parliamentary Forum. He served as a diplomat, like I stated, and he's had 40 years of professional life. Today, I am hosting Dr. Kasuka Simwinji Mutukwa. Dr. Mutukwa, welcome to today's Conversation podcast.
Thank you very much. It's an honor and a privilege to be here with you.
Sir, you have such a rich history, and I thought we could spend a lot of time to learn from you. You've written 2 good books about the history of our country and our relations with China. I thought that we should spend time and talk about this. But before we go there, who is this accomplished man, Kasuka Simwinji Mutukwa? You must have started from somewhere.
Thank you very much indeed. My roots are in a village called Sivumbu. That's where I was born, in the village, not in a hospital. Sivumbu is located in Naswayo district of Naswayo sub-district of Senanga. I'm not sure whether I should disclose my age yet, but I'm a senior citizen now.
Yes, sir.
And my parents were connected with the Barossi Royal Establishment. My father was a traditional minister in charge of works and supplies and buildings. And my mother was a princess in the Barossi Royal Establishment, granddaughter of Wamuungo Rubinda, the brother of the King Liwanika.
Where did you do your schooling?
My first school was 7 kilometers away from the village. I started school at 6 going to 7, walking 7 kilometers each way. I never saw my village during the day. I had to leave early in the early hours of the morning and come back at night, and crossing a stream in a place called Nasiwayo Primary School is still there. In those days, from sub A to standard 2, but I skipped 1 class because they thought I should. Then from there I went to a school called Sianda, which is also in the neighborhood, about 8 kilometers from my village. And there I did standard 3 and 4. Then moved on to main schools like what was called Barossi National School, which is in Mungu, where I did 5 and 6. Then from there I crossed the stream to go to Mungu Secondary School, where I did Form 1 and Form 2. From Mungu Secondary School, I must point out quickly that already Mungu Secondary School, we began to be radicalized in the politics of the nation because some freedom fighters, Mr. Kabwepwe, Digiswa Yobanda, and Nevas Tembo, were detained in Mungu. So during weekends, they would go for football, and we would be talking to them. So we began to know what Zambia, what the message they had. After Mungu Secondary School, 8 of us went to Munali Secondary School, which was one of the 3 prime schools in Zambia. And at Munali, I also had the privilege. I was there from 63 to 65, doing from senior secondary school. During this period, one of the landmarks, apart from the studies, was one that I got exposed now to many other Zambians. We began to appreciate that people spoke different languages and to relate on a one Zambia, one nation basis, because in Mungu we enjoyed only Lozi.
Yes.
So when we go to this school, then it was a different situation. While at Munali Secondary School, I in Form 4, that was independence now. I was privileged to be among those who marched at the Independence Stadium. And in the marches, we were the ones who were able to use our human bodies to draw Zambia. It was a very euphoric event, I remember that. And also, it was the time now when...
Who were the trainers? Who came to train you?
At Munali? Or the training?
No, the training for the independence celebration.
The training was done by some local trainers, but also done by Koreans.
Yes.
So they taught us how to drill and how to hold whatever sticks it was that we used, and of course how to march methodically at the stadium. So I was there when the Union flag was being hauled down and the Zambian flag was being hoisted. It was full of hope.
And let's briefly touch your tertiary education.
Tertiary education, from Munali Secondary School, I was one of the privileged ones to be admitted to the University of Zambia when it opened in 1966. I do recall that it was on the 3rd of March 1966 that we enrolled. There were about 300 of us. Today I'm told the university has over 24,000 students. Those days it was only 300 of us. And it was now, real free education out there at the time. And we were privileged. It literally had the 3-4 star facilities at the Ridgeway campus where we were students. But I should fast forward.
The University of Zambia opened first at Ridgeway campus?
Yes.
Oh, it was not the Greatest Road.
No.
It's a Greatest Road campus.
Greatest Road campus came 2 years after.
Okay.
But also, let's record that we had a new government. Within 1.5 years, they decided to start a university.
Yeah.
Many of them did not go to university, but they valued, including President Kaunda himself, at least as a former teacher, they all valued that they needed to train a cadre of professional Zambians who would take this country to higher heights to provide high-level human resources in all areas. So it was, they had a vision of doing this. This was 1.5 years after independence. After Ridgeway campus, it took some time to complete the University of Zambia on Greatest Road
campus.
So we used to be domiciled in the showgrounds, sleeping in the showgrounds, especially with the boys. So we were there for about a full year before we went to the new campus. Yeah. And I should hasten also to indicate that at the new campus, we began to dig the foundation. I participated in digging the foundation for the present-day library in the University of Zambia. And we saw the whole, as they say in African language, it all grew out in our eyes.
Yes.
But I was also privileged that within 6 months of being at the university, of course, I chose to study political science with sociology as a minor. But one of the major events was that within 6 months, I was elected to be a founding Secretary General of UNZASU, the University of Zambia Students Union.
Yes. Would you remember who was president at the time?
Kekero Kongwa was the president.
Okay.
And I was only 19 years old. I defeated about 4 people who ran against me. So those were some of the beginnings.
The highlights. Oh, wonderful. Leadership comes from afar.
Right. In addition to that...
Why did you choose political science?
I chose political science because, which is really the study of governance. I felt that I needed to know more about how the affairs of our countries are run, and more importantly, also the whole world. I had that ambition of wanting to know how the world conducted itself and how our societies were organized, partly because also coming from a traditional system like we had in the then Barros land, it was very clear that I really was introduced to governance at that level, traditional governance. So I felt this was inspiring. But in addition to that, remember, this is now the time of independence.
Yeah.
And with independence, I was fired up to feel that I wanted to contribute to the welfare of the country. I wasn't sure then whether I would end up in politics or in the professions. The rest of the interview will tell. So after the University of Zambia,
Yes.
while at the University of Zambia, within a year of my being elected to be Secretary General, I was elected as the president of the National Union of Zambian Students.
Okay, the all student bodies.
The whole
in
student,
Zambia.
all tertiary institutions in Zambia. It gave me an opportunity to travel all over Zambia. Of course, my studies sometimes suffered.
Yeah.
But also traveling, apart from traveling in Zambia, and together with some of my colleagues, it was the time as president of the Students' Union that I first traveled overseas in my journeys, which now crisscrossed the whole world later.
Yeah.
I traveled to UK to attend the International Union of Students Conference, because those days we had two international organizations that were taking care of student welfare or organizing students.
Yeah.
One was on the west, which was in London. Then a year later, I traveled to Ulaanbaatar, Mongolia, via the Moscow, Irkutsk and Omsk, to get to Ulaanbaatar to attend the Eastern-leaning International Union of Students.
Yeah, yeah.
And while in the Moscow, I also met Zambians who were in the diaspora training as students, as medical doctors and engineers. So those were the beginnings
Yes.
of certain trends in my life.
Oh, wonderful. The other universities you got from the US, do they come much later or you followed them up?
Immediately they came out later because as soon as I completed the University of Zambia, I was fortunate to be taken on in a program for students who did very well in their areas.
Yes.
7 of us were selected to serve on the staff development fellowship. That was the beginning of the process. Zambians who passed very well, they will be sent to universities and outside, then they come back to train. Because it was my vision very early on that I wanted to teach in the university, be an academic, to teach in the university. By that time, 90% of all our lecturers when I was at the university were all white. In fact, we used to doubt. We didn't know that there were Africans who can teach.
Who could teach, yes,
I felt very encouraged to follow that path. So we then applied for admissions, and I was fortunate enough to get a Fulbright grant, Fulbright scholarship from the United States to study at George Washington University, which is based in Washington, D.C., just a stone's throw from the World Bank, and IMF is one of the old universities.
Yes.
I did my master's there for a period of 2 semesters, which was in record time. Usually it's a 1-year program. I completed it.
Yeah.
Wrote a major thesis on the politics of the Tanzania-Zambia Railway.
Oh,
I got interested in it from that end, from that early stage. So after completing my master's degree at the University of at George Washington University. It was a degree in political science with specialization in international relations. I then quickly wanted to come back home. Those days, it was patriotic and nationalism. We wanted really to get back home to teach it.
Even when you had better opportunities in the US.
We did some few manual jobs here and there to prepare our tickets because my wife had joined me at that point. Then we came back to Zambia after touring a few of the European countries with the little money we raised. Now, this is important for things of today. I get to the airport, I find a staff member from the University of Zambia who had keys for a house which we were going to occupy.
Wow.
Tells you what had happened in those days, which was just opposite Roma Catholic Cathedral in Roma.
Yes, yes.
So there I was, University of Zambia. I started teaching at the University of Zambia and teaching political science, politics of Zambia. And I was in a very...
When did you obtain the PhD?
PhD came on in 75, 76. This was 1971 now, when I completed my master's.
And began to teach at the university?
Began to teach at the university. One major development, apart from teaching at the university. that within about, I think, 9 months of my being at the University of Zambia, I was appointed to the first Constitutional Review Commission of Zambia, called the Chona Commission.
Yes, to inquire
to 1972.
Whether Zambia should participate, or Zambia should adopt the one-party participatory democracy. What were the terms of reference for the Chona Commission?
The terms of reference were very clear. It wasn't whether or not. That was decided by the executive, by the president.
So what were you inquiring into?
What we were inquiring was how to make this one-party state democratic, and in what ways can the party, beginnings now of the party and its government were to conduct the affairs of Zambia based on what had happened through independence. So that was the terms of reference, basically. And there were about 25 of us, drawn from many different institutions, chiefs, party, because the...
What motivated, now that you are a student of history, you write frequently about history, what motivated the one-party state, the creation of a one-party state?
Among the major elements that also were embedded in the terms of reference were the concerns about divisions and, to a certain extent, some political violence that was engulfing Zambia during elections and by-elections at the time. So the leaders of the time felt that it would be prudent for us to work as one family. And the second component was that at this time, Zambia was in the forefront of helping the liberation struggle for Southern Africa. Remember, at the time of our independence, most of the countries which were surrounding Zambia, apart from Congo DRC, were under colonial rule.
Yes.
White minority settler rule, which had been there for over 400 years in South Africa. Almost the same in Mozambique and Angola. Then we had the settlers, very intransigent settlers in what is now Zimbabwe, which was then the Christian Southern Rhodesia, because Zambia was referred to as Northern Rhodesia. So these were the countries that were surrounding Zambia, and Zambia opted through its president, Kaunda, and his cabinet, that we will confront this situation. We didn't follow the Malawi path of working with the minority regimes like in South Africa. Therefore, because of that confrontation, those regimes were not amused. They saw Zambia as an enemy, and they did everything possible, both militarily and the occasions. Meanwhile, Zambia hosted freedom fighters from all those countries, including the ANC. Lusaka was their capital. And all these other liberation freedom fighters had their bases in Zambia, and the President Kaunda was continuously engaged in working with them to seek solutions to the countries, to liberate the countries.
Some view that that period when we, opted to go to from one multi-party state to the one-party state began the erosion of our good governance and our democracy. In fact, even the economic decline somehow is attributed to the political environment when we became a one-party state. What view do you hold on that?
The view I hold is that most of the political decline was as a result of Zambia's strong support for liberation. I think we spent billions of dollars, if this were to be calculated. There have been a number of studies made to determine the extent to which the struggle for the liberation of Zambia's support for the liberation of Southern Africa, what the cost was. It was extremely extensive. Now, yes, indeed, there were certain aspects of the one-party state which were not very pleasant, but on the whole, we are referring to the first government of 27 years. That first government laid a strong foundation for us. There were the people, many of them were involved in the struggle for independence. They were freedom fighters. And they were very much geared to focus on why we were fighting for independence, which is the struggle for political independence.
Yeah.
I will come to that in more detail later. The struggle for political independence, the struggle for economic independence. But I believe you still wanted me to complete my tertiary education.
Yes, sir. Yes,
Then we'll get back to this thrust. But anyway, indeed, I went around the country. This is the Chona Commission now. And then we wrote a report. That report has a number of positive elements, which included, for the first time, declaring Zambia as an independent country through our parliament in our constitution, which followed in 1973. I'm saying so because until then, the independence of Zambia was considered to have been, the constitution of the independence of Zambia was considered to have been
abrogated.
Abrogated, but before then, it was given to us or granted to us by the British.
Yeah, yeah.
With the participation of the nationalists. But this was an act of the colonial parliament in the House of Commons, and the House of Lords, which granted independence to Zambia. So the constitution was not really endogenous. It started with us. So our one-party commission report clearly made that in the preamble, which is available, I think you can get it on the internet, it shows clearly that we indicated that Zambia has now achieved political independence.
And the president shall be Kenneth Kaunda.
Yes. that came from the colonial administrators. But I'll come back to that when I discuss the constitution of the country regarding. So as soon as I had indicated there were 25 of us
who toured the country.
Who toured the country, yes. And regrettably, most of these are no longer there. It's only myself and Mrs. Lili Monze who are still around. And I was the youngest member of the commission at the age of 21. This should be a message to leaders and the youth to know that you can be given responsibility of that.
Even as early as 21.
Even as early as that.
A big assignment such as our constitution making process.
Absolutely. So I would hope that when we consider these matters in future, we'll give a very big slice to the youth of Zambia to participate in this constitution making. Because if you are building a future for the youth, how can you have only old people sitting in the out there to draft those constitutions? So immediately we presented the report of the commission in December. That night, I left for my studies. Because I feared that there would be a temptation to be swallowed in the politics of the country. I was very much anxious first to do my doctorate degree. So from the applications, I was admitted in 5 universities in Canada, in the US, in UK, University of London, Toronto University, all very good universities in the area of political
Which one
science.
did you choose to go and do your
I
PhD?
chose Columbia University, which is one of the top universities in the United States, and Ivy League University, which is based in New York. I think many people are hearing about Columbia of late in these demonstrations which are taking place. So Columbia University is what I selected, and I knew that it would be bringing in even people from the United Nations who were practicing international stuff to study and to participate in this work. So I was there studying political science and international relations. International relations, by the way, covers a very broad spectrum. It's a multidisciplinary field. It has international politics, international economics, international law, international diplomacy. All those we have to be exposed to in order to have mastery over the field of political science. When I completed my studies the PhD. Not the PhD, because the PhD is in 2 parts. There is a dissertation, which is the final point. But midway through, I was granted a Master of Philosophy degree by Columbia University. The doctorate came about 2 years later.
Okay.
Now, I would like to say one or two things about some major events while I was in New York.
Yes.
At that time.
Yes.
When I arrived in New York, the ambassador of Zambia to the United Nations was one who must be known to many, Mr. Rupia Bwezanibanda.
Oh, President Rupia Banda was the ambassador to the UN.
He was ambassador to the UN. He was very generous. He arranged for a special get-together for me with Zambians who were around. There were not many people who were studying doctorates at that time in New York area. But he also invited Namibians, later became president of Namibia, my brother, late brother, may his soul rest in peace, Hage Geingob. And
did you meet him in New York?
Yes, we met in New York because he was studying at a university called New School. We were contemporaries doing graduate studies, and we would be meeting from time to time. And of course, those days people had functions and parties, so we would be meeting at that time. So, but there were other Namibians like Dr. Chitendero, who later became the Speaker of the House in Parliament. So it was very, very generous of the ambassador to have done that for me at his house, at his residence at Scarsdale. Second, during that period, as you know, for the General Assembly, about 20 officials, including politicians, were always coming to the UN from different departments in the government. So we'd be meeting them from time to time. But one outstanding case of the person I met during this period was a gentleman called Frederick Chiruba. He was chair who became president, of course. He was chairman of the ZCTU.
And he was based at ILO in Geneva. In what capacity did he come when he came?
He came as a chairman of ZCTU. Okay. Because they used to invite, the unions would send representatives. So this time around he came. I think it was 1973 or 74. And he came, looked us up, because he knew the family of my wife, the Cairo family, who were in Dola, where he was resident.
Yes.
So he came to us, and then we eventually arranged for him every weekend. He came with a bit of carpenter and a few other condiments.
Yes.
And so we arranged that weekends he should come home and eat in Shima.
Yes.
So literally for a period of 3 months.
He was with you?
He was with me. We were interacting.
After your PhD, did you return to the University of Zambia?
Indeed. I returned to the University of Zambia to teach international relations, the politics of Southern Africa. In addition to teaching at the university, I got involved in the welfare of the university.
Now as a lecturer?
Now as a lecturer. Reason being that we felt that the university was investing a lot of money in us, and out of patriotism, would like to make the university a conducive place for Zambians to be involved in the teaching at the university and working in there. So we formed an association called Zambian Caucus of Zambian professional, Zambian lecturers. And I was privileged to be elected chairman of that group. So our job was to interact with the administration to see how we could then promote the welfare of Zambians. For example, even housing, because most of us were very junior, we were given very inappropriate accommodation while we are seeing other people getting accommodation. So they added Zambian being one of the points for getting housing that was there. And a few other areas we advocated for. Zambian involvement in the administration of the university. Because at the time, the overwhelming majority were expatriates. So this push, of course, led to a number of other elements of pushback. In others were organizing some students to be with us and to be against us. But to cut a long story short, I was at the university for 2-3 years, teaching there, doing some research, became an editor, established a magazine which is still ongoing called Zango, Zambian Journal of Contemporary Studies. I was the first editor of that magazine. And Then, of course, I participated greatly in helping the building of the university. I became head of department of political science and public administration. At some stage, we had to interact with the government because they would call upon us. They started hearing about us. And usually with the universities having all sorts of turbulences. At one stage, twice, I think the State House called on us, together with the university administration, to go and discuss how to move the university forward, especially with the participation of Zambia. It was in this process, and after a few disturbances at the university, that I felt that it was no longer very conducive for me to continue at the University of Zambia.
Why did you feel like that?
Because the level of conflict was becoming more and more, because they saw the advocacy by this Zambian group as being against their interests, the expatriates who had a stronghold, particularly in various university departments. And some of them were able to get students occasionally, to write up a few things which were not very palatable, but we were able to withstand most of this. And I can disclose that during 1977, there was some conflicts at the university. Then we were called to State House again with the cabinet, many members of the cabinet there. So after presenting our cases and so on, later on, I was told to see Mr. Mark Jonah, a very seasoned Zambian who was really legendary in the foreign service, in being a special assistant to the president. And we chatted, and we were told that there were going to be changes at the university. And if there were changes at the university, where would you like to be? Would you like to be deputy vice chancellor? I said, I was not even 30 then. I thought this would be a tall order to be a vice chancellor at that year, a deputy. So I said, well, I would love to go into the foreign service. I said, right, we'll see what can be done. So my story then, I entered the University of Zambia. I was appointed to become Zambia's deputy permanent representative to the United Nations at the age of 29. Fortunately for me, my spouse, Gladys Mutukwa, who was working for the Ministry of Legal Affairs with a master's degree in international law from New York University, was also appointed to be in the Foreign Service, Zambia mission, as the legal counsel. First time, as you know, Ambassador, husband and wife were appointed.
We're serving at a highly specialized mission at the United Nations, but you were properly qualified.
Absolutely.
Both of you were properly qualified.
I think it was the first PhD in the Foreign Service at the time. And in the field of international relations, which was the UN became the little laboratory for practicing my international relations studies.
The transition to politics, we'll tackle it through your lenses as you review the presidents. But I want you to briefly speak about the books you've written. You've written this beautiful book, The Birth, Rise and Role of SADC Parliamentary Forum in Addressing Regional Issues. I think this came as a result of your later work when you were Secretary General of SADC Parliamentary Forum. And this beautiful book, Origins of Africa's Relations with China, the case of the Tanzania-Zambia Railway Tazara project. Let's start with this one. Why did you think that we needed to document the history of the Tazara project?
Let me request your indulgence to complete my other, after the UN.
Okay,
or to indicate,
we can come to this.
Yes, we come to it. The UN proved to be one of the most exciting period of my stay, of my career for international relations, but also, to represent Zambia alongside other professionals, and the ambassador was there.
Who was your ambassador?
Ambassador was Paul Rusaka.
Ah, okay.
And so I was the deputy, and The New York embassy, like you know, with the embassy in Addis Ababa, is a very busy joint, especially because there would also be issues